unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome and happy Friday night. I hope you're having a good start to the weekend and all the stuff you like is happening and all the stuff you don't like is not happening. Wow, what a great generic intro I've given you. We've got a great lineup for you tonight. In 10 minutes time, a woman pretty much internet famous for chopping wood. She originally parodied masculine wood chopping dudes online, but now she's made holding an axe a career. So much so she's written a book. So we'll cover the joys of wood chopping and what to say to those who say girls can't hack it. I mean, they can't chop wood or be a blacksmith or any number of things our upcoming guest has been criticized for, but she does well. That in 10 minutes time. Then in the Rocky Mountains in Canada, a fungus is killing bats. So conservation scientists are crawling into caves to figure out what is going on. What is going on? That we'll cover halfway through the hour. It's going to be a great lineup, action-packed show. Let's jump in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
I like musical theater productions like I like my dates. Emotionally confusing, legally complicated, and ideally accompanied by wine. I mean, I'm in recovery and don't drink, so maybe non-alcoholic beer, but imagine my delight when I heard San Francisco is putting on Luigi the Musical, a full-on song and dance comedy about the alleged corporate assassin, Luigi Mangione. Yes, folks, they're turning a murder trial into musical theater. And no, it's not being produced by a Florida man, but give it time. Now, the controversial figure, Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, is accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, in case you've been living under a rock, which, depending on your politics, either makes him a monster or perhaps the Robin Hood of high deductibles. Allegedly. I don't know why that's allegedly, I just feel like I need to say that a lot to not get sued. Anyway, the show premieres June 13th and promises a wildly irreverent, razor-sharp comedy, which I think in theater code means don't bring your conservative aunt. In the musical, Luigi is promised to be reimagined as a misunderstood guy behind bars. But not alone. Oh no, he's joined in by fictional cell block camaraderie by fellow alleged criminals like Sam Bankman-Fried, the man accused of cryptocurrency fraud, and Diddy, the man accused of... I'm not touching that one. But if that's not an all-star lineup of men you'll regret defending in 2025, I don't know what is. And speaking of not being alone and of cell block camaraderie, I think this musical just goes to show it's not the destination. It's not what you're alleged to have done. It's the friends you make along the way. Now, the creators insist they're not glorifying crime and they're not glorifying anyone, which is exactly what you want to say when you're glorifying someone but don't want to get in trouble. We're not trivializing crime, they say, just setting it to music with jazz hands and some light tap. They even cite the show Chicago as an influence, which makes sense. That's a dark musical. But murder is tragedy. Murder with choreography, however, that's $89.50 and a 2-drink minimum. Sorry, alleged murder. Alleged? Alleged. I really don't want to get sued. Now, there's rehearsal footage online already. So right now, you could watch the actor playing Luigi Mangione dancing in a prison jumpsuit and belting out songs like he's Andrew Lloyd Webber's barista who finally snapped. Now look, jokes aside, the real story here is bleak. The U.S. Justice Department is going after the death penalty, while Luigi's lawyers are calling that a political stunt. Which, to be fair, in the real story, things don't rhyme, and they certainly don't require jazz hands. So yes, this whole thing's complicated. On the one hand, you've got a murder. Alleged murder? Don't sue me. On the other hand, you've got a tight 60-minute musical about that murder, alleged murder, with camp, sequence, and probably at least one joke about American healthcare premiums. Me personally, I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that an alleged killer, gets a musical with costumes and choreography, and I can't even get a birthday card for my own family. Just goes to show, the United States has a real talent for turning tragedy into theater. Allegedly. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888-505-6644. 1-888- Here in New York City where I live, our all-knowing, totally not corrupt at all mayor asked New Yorkers to snap photos of cops staring at their phones. This was all in a hope to deter police bad behavior, scrolling on TikTok instead of doing actual policing work. And boy, did the people deliver. Back in 2022, Mayor Eric Adams stood at City Hall, looked everyone in the eye, and basically said, if you see a cop looking at their phone, take a pic and send it to me. A bold plan, really. Crowdsourcing your management strategy. It's like if your boss said, hey, if you catch Carl slacking off in accounting, just email me a selfie with him and his lunch burrito. But New Yorkers, being New Yorkers, took that challenge personally. They sent the mayor tons of photos. Cops texting, cops scrolling, cops staring at their screen, leaning seductively against poles like they're auditioning for NYPD OnlyFans division. There were all kinds of cops, of all shapes, all sizes. Some with masks on their chins, some in pairs, some alone. But the one thing uniting them all, that dead-eyed phone stare like they just discovered their ex got engaged again. And they're debating what to comment on the engagement photos. And hey, if this was back in 2022, why am I reporting on it now? Well, a Freedom of Information Law request that was extended 15 times was finally released. In it, some of these photos and what people said about them. In that report, one woman said all 5 officers she saw in a day were glued to their phones. And not a single one noticed people jumping the turnstiles. Which is ironic because the whole reason the cops were there was ostensibly to stop fare evasion. But not only were people engaging in bad behavior in the subway not stopped, at least these police officers' Wordle streaks weren't stopped as well. Because they were able to keep their streaks going because they were on their phones or something. That same woman who submitted photos in the report said she's afraid to go on the subway as it is unsafe, and she wished she felt more protected by the police. And get this, another tipster said she got kicked out of a station by a cop she caught on camera. So in New York, if you get robbed, you might not find a cop. But if you take a picture of one scrolling on their phone, they'll be on you like pigeons on a dropped hot dog. And the best part, after all those dramatic promises of aggressive action to clean up the subway and making sure cops were paying attention and not on their phone, the mayor did nothing. Nothing changed. Thank you, Eric Adams. That is, unless you count that 47-page PDF report filled with emails from angry subway riders as a crime-fighting strategy. Somewhere along the line, though, the mayor changed his tune. At a New York town hall earlier this year, someone complained again about phone-obsessed cops. And the mayor, who had apparently gone through his own little flip phone to smartphone awakening, said, No, it's not Candy Crush. The police are doing work on their phones. Like using their Notes app to list suspects. Or Googling how to solve a murder when you're not paying attention because you're on your phone. Or even coincidentally, also Googling how to solve a murder when you're not paying attention because you're Googling how to solve a murder when you're not paying attention because you're on your phone. See what I did there? Kind of meta. Now, I'm not saying cops never use their smartphones for work. I'm sure some do. But if 6 cops are standing around playing Angry Birds while a man yells at a hot dog cart, maybe the optics aren't great. And this past January, recently, when reporters asked Mayor Eric Adams if he wanted people to keep sending him photos like he originally asked, he just said, no, I don't. Which honestly is very New York. It's like inviting people to your party and then locking the door once they show, saying you never even liked dip anyway. So what did we learn here? In New York, the mayor asked for snitches. People to snitch on police. He got snitches, and then he decided the snitching was a bad look. Meanwhile, the New York subway system remains the only place on earth where someone can scream, I am God, while wearing a bathrobe, and still be less distracting than a cop playing Sudoku. Stay alert, stay safe. And whatever you do, don't forget to document it. That is, until authorities change their mind or something. After the break, the simple life of wood chopping by someone who fell into the career accidentally. And by accidentally, I mean by playing a practical joke. So what are those joys? And what can you learn from the simple life of wood chopping by a woman who does it for a living? That coming up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The Last Show with David Cooper.
I am here with Nicole Coenen, who picked up an axe and started chopping some wood as a joke. But now she's internet famous for it. So much so that she's written a book on it. That's called Axe in Hand, A Woodchopper's Guide to Blades, Wood, and Fire. That's available wherever books are sold. I'm excited to talk a job that most of us probably couldn't do, being a woodchopper and writing about it. Nicole, welcome to the show. I admire you so much.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Mostly because my idea of hard labor is, I don't know, picking up the coffee machine. I'm like the most useless. Let's start at the beginning. You were parodying a guy chopping wood online. Why?
That is a great question. It was one of those, intrusive thoughts. So sometimes you just kind of have to follow those. I do remember the day, like I was on my bed, just finished work and was scrolling on TikTok as you do. And then I came across a video of Thor and Bradley, who I just have to say is a wonderful guy. He's an iconic wood chopper. And I came across a video of his and
the idea of an iconic wood chopper to someone who is not in the wood chopping world is very funny to me, but please go on.
No, that's so true. It's funny because it's an interesting niche. But yeah, I came across a video of Thorin and he was being quite dramatic with his wood chopping. Lots of heavy breathing and grunts and such like that. And I just thought it might have been funny if like a woman did that, and and so literally I just got off my bed and went outside, and I had quite a few rounds of wood and just filmed a video. And then all of a sudden when I posted that, people in the comments were like, "This is good. You should do another one." And then I did another one and another one. And funny enough, I sort of became the cliche that I was spoofing. And kind of took off a little from there.
Before I did commercial radio, I would make fun of people in this industry as a hobbyist for all the hokey stuff they did. Now I find myself doing some of that stuff. So I get it. But this was just a hobby of yours, or is this something you were very passionate about at first?
It's funny. Yeah, I guess it was just sort of part of the lifestyle out here in BC. When I first started chopping wood, I was working on a farm, and one of the tasks was wood chopping. And at first when I did it, I was horrible at it. But then it was such a cathartic activity, and it was so satisfying to take, a cord of wood, or have like quite a few big rounds and see the process of chopping and like stacking. And there was something so satisfying about that. And then I joined a volunteer group of wood choppers, where we go out, we source local wood, and we chop it into firewood and then sell that firewood and donate that revenue, or we give the wood directly to people that need it. So I was chopping a lot, like a couple times a week.
The idea of volunteer wood chopping, like I'm imagining chopping for the elderly who can't chop their own wood.
Yeah.
That's amazing. See, I love how just a local activity sparks your interest. Here, I live in New York. I guess a local activity is stepping on cockroaches. Maybe I could create videos about that. At what point do you realize this is something you love doing, or does that grow over time?
I feel like I love being outside and doing physical activity and helping the community. So it all just kind of flowed together with wood chopping, especially with the volunteer group that I work with. It was just, it just really felt good physically, like being able to get up in the morning, going to someone's property and helping them with a tree that was downed from a storm, and then taking that firewood and giving it to somebody. It felt good all around, helping the community, connecting with people, and just doing a physical activity. And then I got really into axes and blacksmithing, and so kind of went down that road. So it became not just wood chopping, it sort of broadened out to blacksmithing and then the history of axes, and then got into tree care. So it just really snowballed.
If you had asked me before talking to you if I wanted to go chop some wood, I would have given you 1,000 reasons why it was a schlep and a bad idea. But now your enthusiasm is infectious. I'm like, there's no good reason why I'm not chopping wood.
Yeah, go.
Maybe because I might get arrested by the Parks Association here, but that's another reason. But so people on the internet are encouraging you. this starts to shift your life. This is now, what do you do?
Yeah, at the time when I first started posting videos, I was working full time at a nonprofit, and it was a remote job. And it would be kind of funny because while I would be at work, I'd have meetings with people from sort of across Canada, and we'd be on Zoom meetings, and then I'd get a private message after saying, "Hey, I think I follow you on Instagram." And so slowly I went from full-time remote to then part-time. And my coworkers were so encouraging of me kind of going down into content creation. And then all of a sudden within 1 year, social media was really taking off, and I decided to kind of take the leap into full-time content creation. And it was terrifying. I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. It's kind of like taking it day by day, and I'm still figuring it out. But it's just been such a fun adventure, and I feel really grateful for being able to have a sort of this interest in something and be able to go like deep dive into it, like with axes, trees, and firewood, and being able to share that with everyone is, yeah.
I want to talk about axes, and I want to talk about chopping. Is it as physically demanding as it seems? Because from my viewpoint, it's like that. I suppose I could chop one piece of wood, but a whole cord? Side note, I have no idea what a cord is. I just know it's a lot.
Yeah.
Is it highly physically demanding?
That's a good question. There are quite a few variables, but I would say, yeah, overall, I think they say on average, you burn anywhere from 250 to 300 calories for every 30 minutes of wood chopping. So if you're doing that for a couple hours, like that, you can either do Zumba or chop some wood. So.
Could you do them both at the same time? There's something to explore.
Wow. Okay. We just new niche. There we go.
And then the blacksmithing, that seems, I don't know, dangerous, hot, difficult. How do you get into that?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Very difficult. There's so much science and so much to learn around it, with the different types of metals, and like that's still something that is still, it's a new world to me, but it's really exciting. And I love also that community. There's like just so much history with blacksmithing, and so many cool techniques and so many traditions that have been passed down. And yeah, it really is this art form. And I've been going to a couple like blacksmithing workshops with a friend of mine. And it's just been so cool to learn and to start deep diving into it.
Girls can't chop wood. Girls can't blacksmith weapons. I don't believe those things. There must be trolls online. I think the people who make these kinds of videos are stereotypically, the woodsman types, and you don't fit that script. How do you deal with that, and what do you say to people who have these backward views?
Yeah, I think at first that was definitely something that did affect me when I first started posting, and I would get those kind of comments. I'm also super grateful because when I do post on social media, I usually just like kind of put my phone aside and go sit by the water so that I don't get overwhelmed. But I think at this point, now it's been over 2 years, when I do get those kind of comments like girls can't do this, or like a guy could do it better, I don't really engage with those comments and it's kind of funny because a lot of people, if I do get those comments, I find actually like a lot of people that follow me are way quicker to respond. So if one of those comments do show up on one of my videos, a lot more people will comment back or reply back to that person. And sometimes there's like good discussions in those comment sections. And then sometimes I kind of just step in and are like, okay, let's chill out for a sec.
Well, you can follow Nicole's journey by checking out her book, Axe in Hand, A Woodchopper's Guide to Blades, Wood, and Fire. Nicole, where can we find you online?
You can find me at Nicole_Coenen on Instagram, TikTok. You can find me on YouTube. I am on Facebook. And
MySpace, Friendster.
Oh, yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. What's MSN?
ICQ. Nicole, this was a pleasure. Thanks for talking to me about what you do. And it was nice to get to learn a little bit about you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And maybe we'll get you out wood chopping someday.
Maybe. All right. Why are bats in the Canadian Rockies dying from fungus? Answers up next. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
We're broadcasting relationship truths and scientific discoveries with a comedian's touch. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Treacherous caves, deadly fungus, spooky, scary bats. These are all part of the strange tale of Catamount Cave, a hidden world in the Canadian Rockies where hundreds of bats hibernate while bat conservation scientist Lisa Wilkinson crawls through in the dark to count them, to help them survive against a lethal agent called white nose syndrome, and that takes them in their sleep. Lisa, welcome in. I'm really excited to talk bats with you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Paint us a picture of what it's like to step in to Catamount Cave, a place, well, I would say infested, but you probably wouldn't use that word because you like bats. What do you see, smell, what do you feel when you enter a really cavernous cave filled with bats?
Well, it's dark, it's damp. The cave is actually quite large, so for much of the cave you're able to stand up. There are some crawling and climbing areas, and so you're not that close to the bat. So it's not as though you walk in and you're face to face with a wall of bats hanging down. They're kind of sporadically in various parts of the cave, so it doesn't feel like you're being overwhelmed by bats. And they're silent. They're not moving. They're hibernating, and they just look like they're dead because they're not moving at all, either in singles or little clumps. And I guess it just smells damp. There are wood rats actually in the very front of the cave, so that has a nice earthy smell when you first go into the cave.
Why have one rodent when you can have two?
Well, bats aren't rodents.
They're not?
No.
Oh my goodness. Look, I should have done a simple, what is a bat Google before we started this interview. I'm embarrassed.
That's okay. They're not, they're not like mice. They're not flying mice. They're their own group. They're the most abundant group of mammals next to rodents. Yeah.
Why do they pick Catamount Cave as their winter, I want to say Airbnb? What makes it such prime real estate for them to hang out in there?
That's a really good question. And there probably isn't a lot of prime real estate for bats to hibernate. They need places that are quite cold. Catamount's about 3 degrees, and it has to stay constant. So an animal that goes into hibernation, it lowers its body temperature. If the outside temperature starts going up, it's going to wake up, and you don't want that. You don't want it to use up its energy. And we know that relative humidity is also really important to bats, otherwise they dry out. They could be in hibernation for 6 months. So that right combination of a cool, stable temperature, lots of humidity, not going below zero, they can't freeze. So there probably aren't a lot of places that tick all the boxes for what they need.
Why do you need to go? Why can't you send a drone or a robot? Is the human touch essential here, or do you just love bats so much that you don't want to tell anyone that robots could do it?
Yeah, I don't think we could send in a drone or a robot because it's pitch black.
Oh.
And they're actually not that easy to see. And again, I mentioned there's a little bit of climbing and clambering, so I think you need a human, and it's actually quite fun too. We only do it once a year because we want to minimize disturbance, obviously. We have been doing this for a number of years. They seem quite fine with us very quietly going in and counting them, but it does need the human touch. And it's a pretty special experience. Not for everybody, but it makes for a good day.
White nose syndrome, it sounds adorable. Like maybe a clown that decided to wear a white nose instead of a red nose. It is not adorable. It kills millions of bats. This is a serious problem. For those who don't know, why is it so deadly, and why does it just affect hibernating bats?
That's a really good question too, and it's because it's caused by a fungus that, kind of like the bats, it likes cool, dark places, so it grows in caves and places where bats hibernate. And it originally was found in the state of New York in a cave about 0607. And we think someone from Europe had brought it over on their gear, some spores. And so our bat had no experience with it. What happens is that the fungus begins to grow in the cave. Eventually, after a few years, it proliferates. It starts to grow on the bats, and then it'll penetrate their tissues, like their wings or their nose. And if it's really bad, you get the white fungus. And basically, it causes the bats to wake up. from hibernation. So they wake up in the middle of winter, they're using that stored fat, but there are no bugs to eat. So they starve to death, which is really tragic. So it's more that they're just irritated once this fungal load reaches a certain threshold, and then there's nothing for them to eat.
So their immune system kind of wakes them up, being like, hey, you got to fight this fungus. And by waking them up, they're then...
Yeah, and that's really good point, because their immune system is suppressed when they're in hibernation. So if the fungus was on them and it wasn't hibernating time, they'd probably be able to repel it fairly easily. But that's not the case when they're hibernating.
So they kind of do have resistance to this fungus. Everything that their body is doing right, it's waking them up. But then by waking up in these conditions, they just starve to death.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, this is brutal. Because what could possibly help here? Like, is this a serious concern for conservation? No,
it really is. And as you mentioned at the start, millions of bats have died. We know they play a really important role in our ecosystem because they consume a lot of insects and bugs, including farm and forest pests, mosquitoes. Things that play a really big service to humans as well as the ecosystem. There's lots of research going into it with trying to vaccinate or, you have to be careful about trying to destroy a fungus inside a cave because there's other things living in caves too. And it's quite a complex situation. We know UV light, for example, can kill it. But how do you get UV light in all these nooks and crannies of all these caves? And so there's little solutions that are being tried, small scale. But the biggest thing we can do for the bats is just to give them the best chance at being healthy and resilient and then being able to recover. So habitat for bats, big old trees, wetlands where they can, catch lots of bugs, and having nice, safe hibernation sites where female bats roost in the summer. Try to make sure they've got lots of those roosting spots. So the ones that are able to survive and reproduce will bring more into the population. And unfortunately, bats only have one pup per year. So you can imagine once the population gets decimated, it takes a really long time for it to rebound. So people can help quite a bit. It's easy to look stuff up on how to help bats and just providing that habitat and not being scared of them.
I mean, they're flying. They're scary, man. I don't know what to say. I respect them. I would never hurt them. I'm glad we're conserving them, but I can't help my response,
It's quite natural.
I'm scared of spiders too.
Yeah. No, it's natural. I would say I've seen people's responses change, probably because we're learning how important they are and that they're imperiled. And people may not like them, but they appreciate them. But, we don't understand them because they come out at dark. We don't see them. They're small. They don't get caught in your hair. That's a myth.
We can't be sure that they're a vampire in bat form like Dracula.
Exactly. Yeah, we're quite confident that they don't turn into vampires.
Katamin is a wild place, the cave. What's the most unexpected thing you've seen or heard of happening in that particular cave?
I actually ran into someone who I call sort of an old timer from the community recently, and he described having to get someone out who had broken a leg in the cave.
Oh.
Decades ago, which would have, again, if you can imagine this cave with this labyrinth, twisty, turning, big rocks, climbing, and having to try to splint a leg and carry them out, and then you've got a few kilometers down a mountain.
Plot twist, was it James Franco? Remember that movie where he was trapped in the rock?
No.
Is there one thing you want people to know about the conservation of these bats or this fungus that is causing them a great concern?
Yeah, just support your bats. Bats need help. They're so useful. Let them live, learn to live with them and help them as much as you can because we need them too.
Lisa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Lisa Wilkinson is a senior species at risk biologist with the Alberta government. Read the room is something you might want to say to a computer. But research shows that we humans are still better than AI at reading the room. That is, telling if there's tension between two people or if two people are in love. Why is AI totally useless when it comes to social cues and what that means for you, that we'll discuss after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. nightly rebellion against predictable radio and podcasts. The Last Show with David Cooper.
AI can write you poems, pass your bar exam, probably file your taxes, but ask it to tell if two people are flirting or fighting, and it often short circuits. If you tell AI to read the room, it usually gets it wrong, which is to say your grandma is better at spotting awkward tension across a room than a huge cluster of Google computers. I'm here with Leyla Isik, a cognitive scientist from Johns Hopkins University, to discuss why AI is socially clueless. Leyla, welcome in.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I know in a paper you've got to define things. What does it mean to read the room? How do you study whether someone can read the room?
Great. So like you said, I'm a cognitive scientist. So I mostly study the human mind and brain and human vision. And one of the things we found is that humans are very good at very quickly, from a very short glance, telling things like whether people are communicating with each other, whether that communication is positive or negative. And so we had all of these questions that we asked humans about these short video clips, and we just asked AI to tell us what we thought was happening in the videos.
Like if I'm in a crowded, busy subway train, and even if it's so loud, if a couple starts fighting, I immediately notice. We have this innate ability to check in on what's going on with people.
Exactly. And in our human studies, there was no sound. So this is all just like you said, you're not really hearing what people are saying, but you just see it.
Okay, so how do we ask computers whether they can do this?
Computer vision systems are really amazing right now. So what we can do is we can put the same videos that we give to humans into the computer vision. And then we have to do a little trick to try and get us to tell it all sorts of different things that we ask the humans. So this ranged from is this video shot inside or outside, up to are people communicating, and is it friendly or negative? And so you do some math on the different inner workings of the AI and ask it to give you its best guess about what's happening across a bunch of different videos.
And the verdict's in. How is AI at present? How good at does it read social cues like this?
Yeah, not great. So we tested over 350 different AI models. So with the caveat that we looked mostly at open source models that I guess in AI terms maybe are a bit old. So some of them are from a couple of years ago, which, as you know, the pace of AI is changing very quickly. But we did make a point to include a couple of the latest and greatest models from OpenAI, those sorts of places. And one thing we found is that there was some variation across the models, but as you get to bigger, more modern AI models, they're not necessarily getting better at these sorts of judgments.
There's a certain irony in a company named OpenAI not making their latest and greatest models openly available, but we'll leave that aside for another day.
Indeed.
And there's some value to models picking up on what people are doing. Like if a couple is screaming and in tears on the street and my autonomous vehicle is driving and it looks like, oh, maybe they'll jump out into the street or maybe they won't. Surely they wouldn't because they're rational people. But if they're in a heightened emotional state, and I'm driving and I see someone on the sidewalk, I give them room or I slow down.
Exactly.
There are cases where you would want a computer to be able to do that. Were you surprised that computers or computer models are so bad at detecting this at this time?
We were. I mean, I thought definitely maybe some of these more sophisticated judgments would be a challenge for some of these systems, but we were surprised even at some of the simple things we asked, are these two people facing each other or not? A lot of the AI vision models couldn't even tell us that, which has huge implications for everything from self-driving cars to any other sort of assistive AI you would want to be able to interact with humans. You really wanted to know what the people it's interacting with are doing.
I know when I introduced you, I drew a parallel by saying OpenAI or ChatGPT, these models are great for doing certain tasks. Mm-hmm. Is it a false comparison, writing text and predicting the next word, to compare it to vision? Because when you're dealing in pixels, there's millions of them, and it's a much more complicated computation than just generating a word.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, the vision problem is more complex, but the AI vision systems have been made their own pretty amazing strides. I mean, so like your iPhone camera you can search all sorts of things like pictures of my dog or pictures of a baby, and it can find those images for you very easily. But I think where it starts to fail is in these more dynamic social contexts.
The deep question here is, are we just not there yet? Or is there some fundamental block that you think that computers or computer models will never be able to predict human emotion, behavior, how they're talking to each other based on a photograph or video?
So I don't think there's a fundamental, I don't think it's something that is not achievable, because up to a certain point, humans do this very well. They're very consistent, even from like very short snippets of video. I think we might need to start looking at different approaches for this. One of the interesting things from our paper is that just scaling up models doesn't necessarily make them better. And that's really been sort of the AI strategy over the last decade, is like bigger models, more data to train on. And it can do all these amazing things. I'm really hesitant to say that that can't do something, because maybe we'll wake up tomorrow and it'll be solved.
We don't know,
I think for these sorts of tasks, we need something more, a totally different approach.
That's interesting. Yeah, for predicting text, it's like more computers, bigger models, wasting more electricity, boom, it's better.
Mm-hmm.
There are diminishing returns, but it's still getting better and better. Does your paper maybe imply that with vision, computer vision, that kind of thing, we got to really start from basic principles and approach it from a different angle?
Well, I think for a lot of computer vision, the bigger models, more data has gotten us pretty far. But like you mentioned, more and more energy. Historically, AI has really drawn inspiration from neuroscience and cognitive science. And I think that that can be a place to make these algorithms both more human-like, but also more efficient. We do so much with just, the circuitry in our brain. We don't need these totally giant computers to solve these tasks. So I think that's a place where these AI systems can look for inspiration.
Getting imaginative here, if a computer vision model were good at predicting human emotion, what would that imply? What could be built using that? Why would that be a good thing?
Well, I think like I said, anytime there's really great promise in assistive AI helpers in the home, in medical settings, in customer service. So you can imagine it would be nice for those sorts of things. For me as a cognitive scientist, AI has been a really useful tool to help us study different aspects of the mind and brain. And I think better models could unlock a lot of potential there as well.
I'm imagining an AI therapist in my apartment all the time, mediating fights between me and my girlfriend just by watching our faces.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound great?
It does. I think this is a big piece to like having robots in our house interact with us like in science fiction.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing your research. What's next? Anything else in this field?
So another part of the research we do tries to develop more human-inspired AI models. And so we have some work along those lines trying to build models based on the principles we know humans use to learn, to help them learn these social cues more efficiently. So that's one line of work I'm excited about. Another line of work looks at, like I mentioned, this was all very short video clips. We do another line of research looking at how people process long audiovisual movies like TV shows. So that's another exciting thing in the pipeline as well.
Oh goodness. If I was one of your test subjects to train your model, I cry at everything. Like every movie, I just bawl. I don't know why. Well, Leyla Isik is a cognitive scientist from Johns Hopkins University. Leyla, thank you for joining me. Thanks for the discussion.
Thank you so much.
After the break, my friend and a stand-up comedian is dealing with lots of trouble. She's getting hit on left, right, and center after gigs and at thrift stores. What to do about it, and why you shouldn't hit on women while they're working, all while having a laugh. For that, join me and Toronto-based comedian Natalie Norman in just a few moments. Whatever the next 10 minutes is going to be, it'll definitely be something.
Part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The last show with David Cooper.
Moody McMooderson is joined by Toronto-based, that's me in case you're wondering, Toronto-based comedian Natalie Norman to talk about a problem relatable for everybody. Getting hit on after you perform in stand-up comedy shows. I think everyone can relate to that. Natalie Norman, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Moody.
I am in a good mood. Things are good. I was complaining in my therapist's office this Tuesday.
Yeah.
About how there's no chaos in my life.
Wait, that's a complaint?
Yeah, I used to really find a lot of meaning and identity and in the struggle, you know, like in fighting with my parents or like getting fired from work or like dealing with an acrimonious divorce or having a substance abuse problem. Like life was very exciting during those times.
Well, this is a sign of a sick person.
No, I'm not going to make decisions to get me back there. I'm happy with the decisions I've made. I'm happy with the more long-term thinking. The benefits of not being that way way outweigh the negatives, but there is a negative. Living that way is very exciting.
Okay, so why I'm saying you're very sick is because even if you're not trying to get there, you have to realize that chaos is still stress and it's unhealthy, and you have to find the joy and excitement in the mundane.
I know. It's like when I first started doing radio, I would have like my ex-wife call the show and yell at me about I would talk about her on the show and she'd call in and she'd be like, don't talk about me on your radio show, on the radio show. And I thought I was this creative genius because I'm like, my life's so dysfunctional and I'm bringing my dysfunctional life in its realness to my show. And that's art. But I didn't realize that was just a substitute for not actually putting in any effort and like researching about my guests and writing good questions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's accepting chaos as excitement.
Exactly. And I think stand-up comedians do it too. They think if their life is insane and they talk about their insane life, they'll be funny. But that's kind of a substitute for being a good writer.
Exactly. Well, I think also I think there's a lot of mentally unstable people in comedy, but I also notice when you heal and either you heal and you leave.
Yeah, like me. That's why I don't do stand up anymore.
Yeah, that's why you don't do it.
Well, also I suck at it, but the other one as well.
Or you heal and you learn to find the excitement in the everyday things and actually feel better about it.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
And I'm trying to be creative about my show without having to fight with my girlfriend on the air. You know, that's not art. And eventually you're just going to isolate everyone you love, which is what happened to me.
Well, it's art. It's art if it's satire, but it's not satire for you.
No. I mean, there is this inherent real element to my show where it's I'm not playing. I'm playing an exaggerated version of myself, but the conflicts, the things I talk about, they're all real. But at the same time, I'm not playing out dysfunction on my show. I'm not inviting a friend on and then confronting them about the fact that they slept with my ex. That's what I used to do. It was the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah. And even that was constructed.
In a sense. I mean, the fights were real, but I was,
Yeah, but they prompt them and they question them so that if they get more, they one up it so that they get more conflict.
Oh, you mean Jerry Springer? Yeah, that's not real. I'm talking about anyway, not important. I'm just saying I'm in a good mood despite being living a boring life. That's all.
Right. And despite telling me I should stop looking at myself in the camera.
Yeah, well, that's a separate issue. Not important.
I haven't seen a mirror today. We're talking about people hitting on comedians after they get off stage.
Mostly you.
Yes. Well, not mostly me. It happens to every comedian.
No. No, I just mean the angle from which we are looking at it is mostly you. It's not a general angle.
Well, I'm going to make it a general angle for everyone.
Fine.
I'm going to make it. There's multiple jobs where a person performs and they're sexy because of their performance and people hit on them.
Yes. They feel like they know you. You've gone up there and they've spent time with you. It's been kind of one-sided time.
I mean, I think they think I'm slutty.
Well, that too.
I think they see me and they're like, well, that's a slut.
Is it because your material is in the gutter?
Yeah, it's provocative.
Provocative.
I'm a provocateur.
You're flirtatious when you're up there talking about your body parts and how you use them.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I'm sure, I'm interested, but not in you. Ew.
Yeah.
Usually if someone's hitting on you, you're you're a ghoul. Get out of my face.
But do you really want someone who likes you because they liked you on stage? Don't you want someone who likes you for you, Natalie?
Well, you want them to also like that part of you.
I mean, my girlfriend, she can't stand to listen to my show, but she likes that I do the show. She likes that I'm a creative.
Yes, but I would also want, for me, it's important that the person inherently, can appreciate what I'm doing.
Yes, as a craft, but you don't want someone who's a super fan because then everything you say, you can boss them around. They've got no personality. They always defer to you.
Well, that's you're an evil person.
Okay, well, I'm an evil person.
You're an evil person. I don't want to manipulate someone to take advantage of them.
I've never slept with my legion of fan, singular intended.
What's their name?
Well, it's my mom, so.
I would hope not. Ew.
I'm just saying.
But we're really talking about this because I was in a Value Village.
Okay, which is like a thrift store?
Value Village is the Canadian version of Savers. Do you know what Savers is even?
No, stop shaming me.
It's like Salvation Army.
I know what that is.
Yeah, I am shaming you.
Okay.
It's like a Salvation Army. And I buy only all my clothing from there because I'm environmentally friendly. And I was in there trying on the most hideous hat you've ever seen.
It was a butter hat. Everything was good about you except your hat.
Yeah, like take a baseball cap, but take off the rim.
What? So that's just like a Muslim or a Jewish yarmulke. It's like a religious headscarf.
But like a little more.
Okay. All right.
First time, it was very 90s. And I was like, maybe this will work. And I put it on and I look in the mirror and I was like, this is crazy. What am I doing? And as I'm doing that, a man approaches me and he goes, I got to tell you, that hat looks amazing on you. And I, in that moment, was like, well, something's wrong with this person.
Clearly. For hitting on you or for liking the hat?
All of it. I was like, no, the hat doesn't look good on me. You're sick. Like, and then I go, oh, thank you. I find it too big. And he goes, well, it looks great. And I go, okay, thank you. And then he goes, I also got to tell you, I noticed you from far away. You're so beautiful. And I felt like I had to say something. And I was like, okay, like I'm now annoyed because like,
yeah,
because like I'm vintage shopping. I don't want to talk to you. I'm in my calm space.
Yeah. You're not like sitting at a bar alone, staring at men, hoping they approach. You're going about your day.
I'm going about my day, but specifically for me, I find vintage shopping very calming for my anxiety.
He invaded your calming space.
Yeah. So, and then he goes, I was like, well, thank you. And he goes, I just want to know, what's your name? And I was like, oh, no. I have a boyfriend. And I got to tell you why this is different, because in the past, I have had to say this. Oh, I have a boyfriend, because men don't leave me alone unless you have someone else.
Yeah, I know. It's gross, but that's
However, in the past, I've been lying about it.
I know. You finally have a boyfriend.
And I finally have a boyfriend. And I was so happy. It was like, wow, I'm not a liar.
You've got a boyfriend.
Do you know how excited I am that this was this is real?
Is he excited that you're excited? Or when you scream, like when you're out to dinner and people walk by you, are you like screaming at strangers, I have a boyfriend, and pointing at him and he gets uncomfortable?
Well, he doesn't get it comfortable because he knows who I am by now.
He loves you for you?
I'm not going to say love, but he does definitely there's no part of me he doesn't like.
Wow.
Like he likes me. Isn't that crazy?
Most people like me for everything that I pretend that I am that I'm not, but he just likes you for you.
Yeah. Like he let me take a video the other day being like, this is my, like the camera facing me being like, this is my boyfriend. And I turned to him and he goes,
wow. And did you share it to your legions of followers?
Yeah, my legions. If I shared it to one friend.
Was it my mom?
It was your mom. It was your mom. My one friend is your mom.
That's what they call a callback in the biz, Natalie. You're welcome.
Thank you. But my point is, can you believe I'm not a liar anymore?
No. This was a freeform odyssey that I enjoyed every minute of. I don't even know what we talked about, but I know we talked about something.
We talked about me having a boyfriend and hating people bothering me during vintage shopping.
Oh, yeah. And then what it means to be happy and bored. And I remember now. Natalie, gigs coming up in the Toronto area?
I'm not going to tell you. Who knows when they are?
What do you mean? Don't people have a right to see you?
Okay, the first Saturday of every month at 10 p.m. at Comedy Bar for the summer, I have a show.
That's like tomorrow night. I mean, you should be plugging this.
I have a show tomorrow night at Comedy Bar. Please come. It's called Misbehaving with Natalie Norman.
My ones of listeners, again, my mom, might even consider coming to this, depending on the time.
Your mom's not coming.
She's not coming now. She's not leaving the house. Natalie Norman, what a pleasure it was. Find Natalie at Stalking Natalie. That's STALKING on social media. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Oh, so sweet. Okay, after the break, a continuing installment of jobs you and I could probably never do. A therapeutic clown, someone who goes to hospitals and into all kind of grim environments and brings clowning to the table. So what does a therapeutic clown do, and why might you benefit from one? Those are questions we'll have answered together in a few moments.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
We've all heard of clowns, we've all heard of therapeutic things, but mixing them together is something we'll talk about today as we cover a job most of us could not do. I'm here with Mackenzie Muldoon, a Toronto-based performer. She's a therapeutic clown from the Red Nose Remedy. My goodness, Mackenzie, I am obsessed with your job and I know so little about it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, David. You should be obsessed with my job because I do have the best job in the world. It is absolutely number one.
Let's start at the beginning. What hospital were you born? Sorry, where were your parents on vacation 9 months before you were born? Okay, terrible question. Let's start at the beginning. What is a therapeutic clown? Like, we've all seen, well, not all, but some of us saw that movie with Robin Williams. Like, in my mind, that's what it is. I'm probably wrong.
Patch Adams, people often compare it to that. That was different because he was a doctor who used clowning in his practice. Very different than what we do. We are trained clowns. We come from a background of clown. I did theatrical clown, all that kind of stuff. And then we trained in becoming therapeutic clowns. And so basically, what does that mean? We are working in healthcare, the healthcare setting. And in fact, we go beyond the healthcare setting, but primarily that's where we work. And we work with people of all ages, kids. I have a client who's 107. We have clients of all ages, from babies and all capabilities, abilities, cognitions. But basically, we're there to bring joy and bring comfort and bring agency to our clients. We don't just work with the clients. We also work with the staff. We work with their family members. We work with volunteers. We're there to bring our joy to a place that often has a very little joy.
I imagine when you started studying clowning early in your performing days, was this the end goal or was this something you kind of discovered along the way? And if you did, at what point do you realize humor can kind of crack through people dealing with difficult stuff in their life?
Absolutely. So, I mean, when I started, I went to school for theater, did theatrical
theater
and theater. And I did some physical theater and clown. We did clown in school and stuff. And I loved that side of it. I always did. But it wasn't until much later in life that I even heard of therapeutic clowning. Someone I knew who was an actor, Jamie Burnett, he was doing it at Holland Bloorview and he was looking for a partner. He was looking for a co-clown. And I thought, well, I met with him. We had coffee and he told me about his job. And I went, if you could have seen my jaw when it hit the floor, I was like, this is my calling. This is what I want to do. I want that. So I auditioned for the job. I did not get it. I spent the next 10 years of my life approximately building up my qualifications, building up my clown chops, building up things like mime, music, learning to play the ukulele. And then in about 6 years ago, the person who did get the job, Helen Donnelly, Toronto-based clown performer and therapeutic clown, started a school at George Brown. She did a 1-year program for therapeutic clowning. So 10 of us got in and 8 of us graduated.
Is this a common program? Can I enroll in a local university college, community college for therapeutic clowning? I imagine this was the first of its kind.
It was the first of its kind. And unfortunately, this is the sad part of the story, Helen passed away a few years ago. And so it ran that one time. 8 of us graduated. The 8 of us, we still work and we are Red Nose Remedy. And we have now trained 2 new clowns to join our company. We've done it not through a program through a school, but through other training things, but using her methods, using a lot of the stuff she taught and she prepared. And so unfortunately that program doesn't exist. It was a one of a kind. Maybe someday it will again, perhaps. But right now we're just kind of building up the appetite for a therapeutic clown in the world. So we've got a couple of contracts and we've got a bunch of pilot projects going on. We're in one hospital. We're in a lot of long-term care homes and that sort of stuff. And we're also we've done some pilot projects with at a refugee hotel and places like that.
Walk me through the work. You show up at hospitals, you show up at places where people could really use cheering up. I love Joan Rivers. She's a very dark comedian. I mean, she passed? But she always said, like, if you can't laugh about it, then whatever the thing is kind of winning, whether it's tragedy, whether it's illness. And she's definitely, some of her work is in the gutter for sure, but I agree with that vision. And so tell me about the way that humor can crack through something impossible for people, like grief or fear of loss of life.
It's a beautiful thing. Like, it's just, we go in, we work with the hospital whenever possible. We have clients, we have, background on clients. We warm up, we prep, we get into our outfits. We each have different clown personas. I have a pediatric one for the young kids. We have an elder clown, which is very different.
Does one of your personas get a little inappropriate? Please say yes.
Not in my therapeutic clown world. In my theatrical clown world, for sure.
I mean, there must be some call for an inappropriate therapeutic clown in the right setting with adults only.
We let the clients lead. So I'm not saying it doesn't go there. It's just we would never lead it there. But this is the thing, is we don't go in with anything planned. Some people think, oh, the clowns are here, let's set up no. The best thing is for no one to expect us, just to say there's some friends visiting, and in we come. And the nose, it's an amazing thing. We don't wear any other kind of makeup. Like, we're not we don't have big lips or anything like that. This is the amount of you can't see me on radio, but this is the amount of makeup I would wear, but with a red nose, but with my personas outfit and stuff. And that red nose just allows people to play. And we take our lead from our clients. Sometimes they're part of the act. Sometimes they don't want that. They just want to watch. The other great thing about us is they can tell us to hit the road. They can say, get out of my room. And we celebrate that, because who else in a hospital setting comes into their room and they can say, just go away. I don't want to see you today. No one. If they're medication, if they need to get the physiotherapy, they got to do it. We give you agency. And that's part of the joy. And sometimes that becomes the game. We come in, they go out of here, and it just becomes a thing that they like to do.
Get the heck out of here. I derailed the original question. Cracking through grief, fear.
Oh, yes.
That must be like a very rewarding thing when you walk into a room with people who are really going through it.
Really is.
You can kind of break through to them quickly and make them laugh. That must be very kind of healing.
And sometimes they need to laugh. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they hug us. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes it's a memory. Sometimes there's dance. We're not just there for laughter, but laughter is a common side effect of our visits.
You hear that therapists have to go to therapists when treating really rough clients who make them cry and sad. It must weigh down on you, some of the stuff that you perform through.
It does sometimes. I mean, we've lost many of our clients. We sometimes work in palliative units. And so, of course, but there is something about the curiosity and naivety of the clown that makes it, that gives you, I wouldn't say a barrier. It's not a barrier. It's the opposite. It's an opening. It's a beauty that helps. But we also work together. We always work in duos, which helps. And we do have reflective practice as part of our practice.
Where can people find out more about therapeutic clowns if they want to hire one, or they can think of someone in their life who might benefit from hiring one, or if they just want to help you guys?
Go to our website is the first place to go, rednoseremedy.ca. We actually have a fundraiser coming up. So if you're in the Toronto area, check that out. It's going to be at the Rivoli on Thursday, May 29th. We've got an incredible lineup of amazing musicians, including Devin Cuddy is the headliner, but there's a whole bunch of others, Catherine Rose, Stephen Stanley, Chris Tate, and there might be a few appearances by a couple of clowns, let's just say.
Yes, they've been known to show up. Well, Mackenzie Muldoon is a therapeutic clown from the Red Nose Remedy organization. Mackenzie, thank you for telling me about your job. It's not something I could do, mostly because I'm not funny, and I'm just a generally curmudgeonly person. Curmudgeonly, that's the word I'm looking for. Mackenzie, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, David. Loved it.
We've all heard the phrase born bad, but not all people who are psychopaths are doomed to end up in prison. No, some stay out of trouble. Some even end up in boardrooms. How? Find out next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The last show with David Cooper. Procrastinate your life away with us.
You've heard of the phrase born bad, but not all psychopaths are doomed to end up in prison. Some stay out of trouble, some even end up in boardrooms. New research shows that parenting and privilege might shape whether someone with psychopathic traits turns to a life of crime or a life of climbing the corporate ladder. I'm here with someone who worked on that research. His name is Dr. Martin Sellbom. He's a psychology professor at the Monash University in Australia. Martin, thanks for talking to me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
How do you define someone as having psychopathic traits in a sort of more rigorous research psychology kind of way?
Yeah, so psychopathy is kind of a broad construct. It includes a lot of different types of features. And it's really hard to say that there is like one particular manifestation of psychopathy. So, psychopathy traditionally defined oftentimes refer to like callous, unemotional traits, like people are just don't develop strong emotional connections to other people. They may manipulate and deceive others for their own personal gain. They might in some contexts be quite impulsive because they're essentially reacting on, getting what they want without thinking about the consequences. There's also some suggestion that they don't have much underlying fear, which is why they do some of the things that they do. They also, of course, lack empathy and perspective taking for other people.
There is an idea that those with those traits often have a life leading to crime, sort of getting up to no good, breaking laws, doing bad things. Your study challenges that, though. Walk me through that. Walk me through people that you observed with these traits who aren't, criminals or doing bad things with their lives.
Yeah, so and I think this kind of goes back to what I just said about different manifestations, right? So if you have a lot of different traits that kind of define a psychological construct or disorder, then not everyone who we might characterize as a psychopathic might have all of the features. It may be that they have some of the features, like they're really callous and unemotional, lacking empathy, they manipulate and deceive, but they're not particularly impulsive. So individuals who are kind of cold-hearted, if you will, to use more simplistic language, but are not impulsive, they have pretty good control over their behaviors. They may actually find ways to manipulate and deceive and navigate society in ways that doesn't necessarily places them in prison. But I think it would be a mistake to say that these individuals don't have problems or might get themselves into trouble. It may just be that it's more covert. They are harming other people, but they're not necessarily, involved with the criminal justice system.
Are there specific people with these traits who cope with them in ways that are more seen as productive, like doing really well at work, really climbing the corporate ladder, becoming leaders in the business world?
Yeah, I think they are, but I don't think that these individuals are necessarily entirely adaptive. So they may be self-focused. They may find contexts in which they can channel some of these psychopathic traits and be able to at least ostensibly be successful. But the harm that they may cause onto other people in doing so might still be quite substantial, like kind of cutting people down and so on in order to achieve their personal goals.
Let's look at two examples of like young people with similar traits, psychopathic ones. One ends up in the corporate world, outwardly looking like a normal, productive, empathetic human being who you wouldn't otherwise know, and the other one ending up maybe in prison or dealing with a life of committing crimes. Are there environmental factors that would separate these two people out, typically?
Yeah, so I think this is some of the research that you're referring to that was led by my PhD student, or now former PhD student, because she recently graduated. Her name is Dr. Emma Veltman. She's currently at the University of Melbourne as a postdoctoral fellow. What we found, along with a team of people from the Netherlands who had access to a large longitudinal data set, they studied people over time, was that some potential environmental factors, like coming from more highly resourced environments, for instance, might actually provide a buffer for criminal justice involvement. So, if you're callous, unemotional, maybe even a bit impulsive, in that you're acting on your needs and not really considering consequences, there might still kind of be a safety net around you. Because if you come from, say, a lot of money, you have well-educated parents and so on, that's for all people, that's going to open up opportunities that people who don't have those sort of resources are not necessarily going to have. So I think in these sorts of this sort of example is that one kid might actually have a nice safety network, so to speak, that propels them into more opportunities to channel these psychopathic traits, whereas in the other situation, they don't have those resources and may have affiliations with other kids who are perhaps in gangs and things like that, and end up with the criminal justice system.
It's funny how society might look at someone who has a really aggressive career in business, puts other companies out of business, has great business acumen, but is cold-hearted. We might praise that person, but with the same, in the same thought, we would really look down on and criticize those who commit crime. But it turns out the environment can, from the same beginnings, create those two different types of people.
Yeah, that is what some of our research is showing. And there's been other research too, that a study I published several years ago also suggested that, again, personal income was predictive of who might have criminal justice involvement versus not, who are high on psychopathic traits. So again, like, you have resources, you can kind of find more covert ways of channeling, your needs than if you have nothing.
It reminds me of this concept I learned in therapy called sublimation. Like, if you have traits from your childhood that aren't great, you figure out ways as an adult to kind of cope with them. Like, maybe the overly angry kid who beats people up becomes a boxer and then never has to beat anyone up again, unless it's in the boxing ring. I do wonder if this is like a similar thing where young people with psychopathic traits can grow up, work in a boardroom, and be rewarded for those traits, and not have to engage in psychopathic behavior with strangers and people in their personal life.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And there might be adaptive ways for those who are psychopathic as well. Like, if you don't have fear, you're kind of well set up for a lot of dangerous occupations, right? So, maybe being on a bomb squad or something like that, or being a test pilot, or, doing highly dangerous things that most people would not be willing to do. But if you don't have this underlying capacity for fear, that's not going to be a major barrier. Of course, that means that one still should not be impulsive, because you might mess up and die.
Yeah.
But
I do suppose there's a place in society with people for some of these traits. Like you're saying, someone needs to work on the bomb squad. I mean, it would be exhilarating, but maybe also terrifying. Are there other factors, like maybe that interventions that parents can take for kids? Are there different types of parenting styles or parenting situations where one kid might grow up to be outwardly like a business person and the other one a criminal?
Yeah, so some of this research is also suggesting that more parental involvement, less parental dysfunction in the home, and so on, tend to also serve as more protective factors against criminal justice involvement. So it's kind of like, if you have a good, nurturing, supportive environment, and a special one that's also well-resourced, that is certainly going to put you on a pathway towards success for most people, not just individuals with psychopathic personalities. Most people who have these sorts of environments at least have some capacity for success. And the same is true for those who have psychopathic traits. But there's one other thing I will mention. Intelligence seems to play a role as well.
Well, you mentioned less dysfunction, more nurturing would lead to someone being less psychopathic. I have my mother to call and get angry with in a few moments. Dr. Martin Sellbom is a psychology professor at Monash University in Australia. Martin, thanks for talking to me today. I've enjoyed the chat.
Thanks so much for having me.
When we come back, do you know a narcissist, someone so self-loving, they would rather be gossiped about negatively than not talked about at all? Well, turns out that's kind of common amongst men. The results may surprise you. Up next.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate confessions and useless obsessions. You're listening to The Last Show with David Cooper.
Some people hate being gossiped about, while others seem to thrive on it. Well, a new study says that narcissistic men even enjoy bad gossip. You know, when people are mean about them behind their backs. Bless their fragile hearts. Why would anyone want people whispering about them negatively behind their back? That's what we're going to look into with someone who worked on that. He's a social psychologist from the University of Mississippi, and his name's Andrew Hales. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's start simple here. What exactly is gossip from a psychological standpoint? How do you quantify gossip in a study?
Yeah, so for us, the key element of gossip is talking about other people when they aren't there. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be somewhere in between. But if you're talking about someone when they are not present to know what you're saying, gossip.
But isn't there the old wisdom, the only kind of press that's bad is no press? You know, like, isn't it good if you're like, if they're at least they're talking about you? I mean, that would be the argument for why someone, not me, somebody else, would like if they were talked about badly. Okay, maybe it's me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually glad to hear you say that, because that core insight was a lot of what motivated us to do this study. It's not always comfortable to have people talk about you behind your back, but if the alternative is being so boring that no one has anything to say about you, well, that's not great either.
So your findings suggest that some people, especially men who score high on the narcissistic scale or whatever, actually enjoy being gossiped about. Walk me through how you found that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we wanted to do was to sort of take this core dilemma that we've both noticed here, which is that, you know, you might not want to be talked about, but you don't want to be ignored either. And we wanted to distill it down to its bare essence. So to do this, we gave people a very straightforward scenario. We asked them to imagine that they're at a party, and as the night winds down, people leave one by one, and every time someone leaves, the group naturally starts to talk about them. And when it's your turn to leave, which would you prefer? Would you rather have people talk about you or not talk about you? And we have different variations of this, and we, of course, look at variables like gender and narcissism, like you mentioned, to try to understand who, if anyone, ever would prefer that people talk about you instead of not talk about you.
And the results came in. What were they?
First, let's get the obvious out of the way. People prefer positive gossip to negative gossip by staggering margins, right? Like, people are way more comfortable being talked about if it's positive than negative.
Good. I mean, that follows. How and who preferred to be talked about negatively versus not at all?
Yes. Well, across all these different variations, both gender and narcissism were robust predictors. In other words, exactly like you've said, narcissists and men independently, both are more likely to want to be talked about, even when it's negative.
Why, though? Like, your study touches on loneliness and feelings of social exclusion. Can gossip, even unkind gossip, feel like you're a part of the group? You know, have that sense that, okay, maybe they're saying negative things, but I'm a part of this group, as opposed to, oh, I feel excluded.
Yes, well, that may well be the case. Our data don't speak to that aspect of it specifically, although it would be fascinating to find out if that sense of belonging within a group is part of it. The complication there is, if the group is bad-mouthing you, even if they're talking about you, it may well be an expression of how much you don't belong. So we probably have to get into some of the details there of how exactly they're talking about you. On the other hand, if they're not talking about you, then that itself is a pretty concerning alarm sign that you don't belong.
In my old job, there was this weird, like, Canadian media gossip podcast. And every now and again, they would say awful things about me, and I would listen to them, and it wouldn't really bother me, and it would always shock my girlfriend. But my theory was not that necessarily that I was a narcissist, which I probably am, but I was a youngest child who got, like, no attention in a busy household with many children, and I didn't get any press. And so as an adult, bad press is, like, better than those negative experiences. I guess my question is, there could be other reasons why people want to be talked about, even negatively.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and here again, the story's complicated. We hypothesized in one of these 5 experiments we did, we thought that if this is about a hunger for attention, any kind of attention at all, well, then it should be the case that if we ostracize some people ahead of time, those people will be extra hungry for attention, and they might have a greater desire to be gossiped about. But we found no evidence of that. It turns out that whether you had recently been ostracized or not didn't seem to have much of an effect on whether people wanted to be gossiped about. Now, on the other hand, when we measured people's overall levels of ostracism, day in, day out, how often do you find yourself being ignored and excluded? For the most part, the people who are ostracized more did want to be gossiped about more. So it's sort of a mixed set of evidence there. So I think there's something to the idea, but it's complicated.
Now, the other side of this, mostly men. Why is that? Why do men seem more open to being gossiped about than women? Is this a matter of ego, social conditioning? Is it something more primal? Like, it seems odd that there's this gender division in your findings.
Yeah, I think you've hit on some of the main aspects there. Men have a very different set of societal expectations. The one that I'll add to the mix as a possibility that we need to sort out in later research, but men are on average more comfortable with risk-taking than women are. And I think gossip in a way is kind of a risky thing to have happen about you. If people are talking about you and it goes well, then that's a really nice social payoff. But if people are talking about you and it goes badly, it could go very badly. And because we know men are more comfortable with risk-taking on average, this might just be an expression of their comfort with a certain type of social risk-taking.
It is risky. I feel like there's a certain amount of adrenaline involved, like knowing that they're talking about you, but not knowing what the outcome is. Did the group of friends decide they really liked you more than they did before, or did they decide they wanted to get rid of you? It does seem risky now that I think about it. You know, gossip often gets this bad rap, but would you say it has some social value?
Absolutely. And I think we all know the downsides of gossip. And in fact, societies across history have had a certain stigma around the idea of gossiping about people. But we also know how common it is. Gossip is ubiquitous, and behaviors like that wouldn't be so common if they didn't serve some functions. And there's some wonderful research on gossip showing that, of course, it has downsides, and of course, it can be very damaging to the people who are the targets of gossip. But it has other benefits. For example, the group doing the gossiping, they can feel stronger bonds. It sort of unites them together to have almost a sense of a shared secret or doing something slightly transgressive. It also helps groups communicate norms. So we're social animals, and it's really important to know what other people care about. And paying attention to what other people gossip about is how you know what other people care about. And the final positive aspect that can emerge from gossip is, paradoxically, it can promote cooperation. So I'm motivated to behave more positively and more cooperatively if I know that people are going to talk about me if I behave badly. On the other hand, if there were no gossip, then I could behave as badly as I want, and I wouldn't have to worry about developing a negative reputation. So it's the risk of the threat of gossip is one of those things that might make people actually behave better.
Well, thank you for sharing your study with me. I do think my producer had you on the show because she knows I like reading mean texts about me on the show. I think she was trying to say I'm a narcissist, but I think the real answer is it's more complicated than that.
Great.
I appreciate your time, Andy.
Great. Thank you.
Andrew Hales is a social psychologist from the University of Mississippi. That is the show. Thank you so much for listening to it. We'll be back Monday night. I hope you have a great weekend. As always, check out our podcast. That's at www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com. There you can find out details and subscribe. Witty thing to say at the end of the show. Witty thing to say at the end of the show. Oh, I got it. Witty thing to say at the end of the show. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show. Well, it was.